Think you're broke? The average person owns way less than you think, and the numbers will shock you. That might sound dramatic, but once you actually look at the data, it starts to make sense. Because the idea we have of normal money is completely warped. Scroll through social media and it feels like everyone's doing well. People buying homes, driving new cars, traveling nonstop. But that version of reality is heavily skewed toward a very small group of people. And that's why in this video, we're going to strip all of that away and look at the real picture. What does the average person actually own? Not based on influencers or billionaires, but based on real global numbers. And once you see how wealth is actually distributed, you'll understand why feeling behind is way more common than most people think. 1. Global average wealth per adult. So let's start with the number people usually hear first, the average wealth per adult worldwide. On paper, that number is around $95,000, and when most people hear that, the reaction is usually the same. That doesn't sound right. Because if the average adult really had around $95,000, life would look very different for a lot of people. But that number is a straight average. It takes everyone on the planet, adds up all their wealth, and divides it evenly. The problem is, wealth isn't evenly spread. A small group of extremely wealthy people massively pulls that number upward. Think about countries like United States, where billionaires like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk exist. Their wealth alone counts the same as millions of regular adults combined. So when you hear the word averaged, it doesn't mean most people are anywhere close to that number. It just means a handful of people at the very top are distorting the picture. And to understand what people actually own, we need a different way of looking at the data, which is called median global wealth. 2. Median global wealth. In median global wealth, instead of looking at the average, economists also look at something called the median. Now, the median is the point where half the adults in the world have more and half have less. When you look at it that way, the global number drops fast. The median wealth per adult worldwide is around $8,650. Not 80,000, just over 8,000, which means that half of the world's adults live with less than that. And this lines up with what we see in real life. In many countries across India, parts of Africa, and Southeast Asia, that amount can represent years of savings, not something sitting in an account. So when people hear that the average adult has close to $100,000, this number tells a very different story. It shows that for most people on Earth, wealth is limited, fragile, and far lower than we usually imagine. 3. Median net worth by age. In the United States, now let's zoom in on one country where this data is tracked really closely, the United States. If you're under 35, the median net worth is around $39,000. That includes savings, investments, and everything you own minus debt. Once people hit their mid-30s to early 40s, that number jumps to about $135,000. And this is usually when careers stabilize, incomes rise, and people start building assets. By the time people are in their 40s and early 50s, the median net worth climbs to roughly $247,000. Then, in the 55 to 64 range, it goes up again to around $364,000. For those between 65 and 74, median net worth tops out at just over $400,000. And after that, for people 75 and older, the median drops slightly to around $335,000, often because savings are being used during retirement. What's important here is the pattern. Wealth usually takes decades to build. Most people don't accumulate meaningful net worth early in life. So if someone in their 20s or 30s feels behind, these numbers show that it's actually the norm, not the exception. 4. Wealth distribution, under $10,000. Now let's zoom out again and look at the global picture. Around 1.49 billion adults worldwide have a net worth of less than $10,000. That's not income. That's everything they own, minus debt. Nearly a quarter of the world's adult population is living below that line. And this isn't limited to one place. You see this across large parts of India, sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia, where owning a home, having investments, or building savings isn't the norm, it's the exception. Now compare that to the other end of the spectrum. Only about 1.6% of adults worldwide are millionaires. That means out of every 100 adults on Earth, fewer than 2 have a net worth of $1 million or more. Yet those are the lifestyles we see the most. Supercars, luxury watches, first-class flights, all coming from a very small slice of the population. So when it feels like everyone is rich, the numbers tell a very different story. Most people aren't even close to that level of wealth. 5. Wealth inequality. And in fact, when you look at global wealth distribution, it's not just uneven, it's extremely concentrated. The top 2% of adults worldwide own more than half of all global wealth. At the same time, the bottom half of the world's population owns barely 1%. That means half of humanity is sharing about 1% of the wealth, while a tiny group at the top controls the majority of it. And yeah, this is why averages can be so misleading. A single billionaire in the United States or China can outweigh the combined wealth of millions of regular people across poorer regions. And this concentration isn't just about income, it's about ownership. Ownership of businesses, ownership of real estate, ownership of stocks, land, and entire industries. This is why wealth tends to stay at the top. Money makes money, and once someone reaches a certain level, it becomes much easier to grow wealth than to earn it from scratch. So when people feel like the system is stacked, the numbers show they're not imagining it. Wealth inequality isn't subtle. It's built into the structure of the global economy. And a huge part of that inequality comes down to geography, because opportunity and wealth aren't evenly distributed across the world. 6. Median wealth by region. In North America, the median wealth per adult is just under $96,000. This is driven mostly by the United States and Canada, where home ownership, retirement accounts, and stock market access are more common. In Oceania, which includes Australia and New Zealand, the median sits around $62,000. Europe comes in a bit lower, at about $53,000 per adult. Strong social systems help here, but wealth is still uneven between western and eastern parts of the continent. Then there's Greater China, where the median wealth per adult is around $13,000. Massive economic growth has lifted millions out of poverty, but median wealth still lags far behind Western regions. In Eastern Europe, the median drops slightly lower to around $12,000. When you look at Southeast Asia, the median falls to roughly $7,500. And in Latin America, it's close to $6,400. At the lower end, Middle East and Africa has a median wealth per adult of just over $5,500. So depending on where you live, the definition of normal wealth can be completely different. What feels average in one region would be considered extremely wealthy in another. And that difference helps explain something else: why extreme wealth, especially millionaires, is clustered in just a few parts of the world. 7. Millionaires by region. Now let's talk about where the world's millionaires actually live. Nearly 43% of all millionaires on Earth live in the Americas, and the vast majority of them are concentrated in one place, the United States. This isn't random. The US has deep stock markets, strong property ownership, and businesses that can scale globally. That creates more opportunities for people to accumulate large amounts of wealth. Regions like Asia Pacific and Europe do have a lot of millionaires too, but compared to North America, the numbers drop off quickly. So even though the world is full of people, extreme wealth is still clustered in a relatively small part of it. And that concentration shapes how we perceive money everywhere else. 8. What this means for the average person. When you put all of this together, a clear picture starts to form. Most adults in the world live with a net worth below $10,000. Only a small percentage of people have meaningful investments, large savings, or appreciating assets, and the majority of global wealth is still concentrated in regions like North America and Oceania. Meanwhile, large parts of Latin America and Asia operate with far lower levels of wealth as the norm. So if someone feels like they're behind financially, statistically speaking, they're not alone. What we think of as average is usually based on the most visible lifestyles, not the most common ones. And once you step back and look at the numbers, it becomes clear that financial struggle isn't failure, it's the global reality for most people. So when people talk about the average net worth, it's important to understand what that really means. The average gets pushed up by a very small group of extremely wealthy people. That's why it often feels disconnected from real life. The median tells a much more honest story. It shows what most people actually own, and for the majority of the world, that amount is limited. Wealth is still heavily concentrated in a few developed regions, while most adults globally live with relatively modest assets, and social media makes this gap feel even bigger. When you see Lamborghinis, private jets, and yachts every day, it creates the illusion that extreme wealth is normal. But the reality is, those lifestyles belong to a tiny minority. Most people are just living in a world where wealth is far less common than it looks. And with these, Hope everything is clear to you guys. What do you actually want me to cover next? Drop it below in the comments section and I will make sure to make the next video on your chosen topic, so see you there in next video. Until then, cheers.